Forget it. Okay. We're going to switch gears a little bit here. And this is something I did it last year, but it was kind of I don't want to say thrown together because that makes it seem like, I got up one day and just sort of did it on a napkin. But I talked about this last year, and a guy wanted me to do it again this year. And so I agreed. What we're going to talk about here is, let's just assume, for the sake of discussion, that the extraterrestrial as creator of humanity. Now, none of the literature I'm familiar with has ETs claiming to have created the universe. And I don't know anybody that says that. But they do often want to position the extraterrestrial or whatever entity, whatever channeled message they receive. There's often this talk of how extraterrestrials created humanity. And so what we're going to do here is essentially say, okay, if this is true, if that's true, that we were actually created by extraterrestrials who are now essentially abducting people and experimenting on them, and if it's true that Zecharia Sitchin's views are correct, and of course you know that I don't think that. But again, if it is, if the Mesopotamian text actually describes some extraterrestrial race creating us, what would that mean? Okay, how would that work out in terms of a worldview? And is that something to get really enthused about? Okay, and we're going to go through and just sort of follow the logic. This session's not going to take that long, but we're going to follow the logic and compare the theistic, the traditional theistic creator paradigm, whether you're a Muslim, Jew, or Christian doesn't matter, but just that there's a God, a personal God who creates, and sort of note the comparisons. And I'm going to suggest that this reveals the dark side of believing that the design of us, the design of our civilization at the hands of ETs is a dark thing. It's not a very optimistic thing. So, for the sake of the session, let's presume for a moment, if this teaching is indeed correct, we'll presume that humanity was created by ETs who came to Earth long ago. We'll presume that these ETs and their creation of humanity is described in ancient Mesopotamian texts, whose content is often mirrored in the Bible, and that these ETs are therefore the God or gods that humanity has become accustomed to thinking about. If the ET creator is view is true, then where would that leave us? Is that something to celebrate or get enthused about? Should we, as they did in Independence Day, go up to the top of buildings? Oh, you're wonderful. You're finally back to bless us. Let me suggest several implications that logically extend from those assumptions. First, if this is true, then you, as a member of the human race, have no inherent dignity. This conclusion extends from the fact that if ETs are the gods of the ancient creation stories, then we were created as slaves by the Mesopotamian ET gods, the Anunnaki, because that's what the texts say. Okay? It's point blank what they say. This is Atrahasis, Tablet 1. When the gods instead of man did the work and bore the loads, the gods' load was too great, the work was too hard, the trouble too much. Right there, that should tell you that the conception of a god in Mesopotamia is quite different from the conception in the Israelite religion. God doesn't need a lunch break, or much less a slave race to do work. The great Anunnaki made the Igigi carry the workload sevenfold. Anu, their father, was king. Their counselor, warrior, Elil. Their chamberlain was Ninurta. Their canal controller, Anugi. They took the box of lots, cast the lots. The gods made the division. Anu went up to the sky, and Elil took the earth for his people. The bolt which bars the sea was assigned to far-sighted Anki, so on and so forth. The last line, the Anunnaki of the sky made the Igigi bear the workload. The gods, pity them, had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land, so on and so forth. For 3,600 years, they bore the excess. Hard work, night and day. They groaned and blamed each other, grumbled over the masses of excavated soil. And then they decide, let us confront our chamberlain and get him to relieve us of our hard work. Come, let us carry the Lord. Let us carry the Lord, the counselor of the gods, the warrior from his dwelling. And let's go and grab him, take him out of his house. And made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. Why are we blaming them? Their work was too hard. Their trouble was too much. I'm abbreviating this with ellipses. They said, let's go get that God. And then they go and confront him, and then listens to their complaint and says, well, I guess we can't blame them. Their work was hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. There is, and the text breaks off there. And so they go to the creatress, Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let her create a mortal man so that he may bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Nintu shall mix the clay with his flesh and blood. Then a god and a man will be mixed together in clay. They answered yes in the assembly, the great Anunnaki who assign the fates. Now, if this is the case, you are all owed reparations by the gods. I mean, that's essentially what you've got. You are a slave, your father was a slave, and so on and so forth all the way. We're all slaves. In other words, we have no inherent dignity. We are the low end of the totem pole in a divinely ordained caste system. That's what we are. We are chattel, if this is true. Now, this divine image idea, which is biblical, aren't we created in the image of the gods? Again, it's a biblical theistic concept. It is not part of the Mesopotamian concept. If we go back here, let her create a mortal man so that he may bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let men bear the load of the gods. Zechariah Sitchin tries to, and it's kind of amazing again, he tries to take these phrases, bear the yoke, bear the load, and he tries to argue that yoke, and load here actually refers to the image of God. Of course, the problem is that the biblical word for image is tselem, Akkadian is tsalmu, and that is not the word used in any of those three lines in that text. So contrary to what he says, this is not a creation that has the gods, the Anunnaki, creating humanity in their image. No, the text actually means what it says, that we were created, in their view, as slaves. We are strapped with their burden. Well, that's not what the alien who abducted me told me. Well, if you were told about how special you were, think again. Or abandon the Sitchin worldview, which you could do and still retain, an extraterrestrial worldview. Two questions. How do you know his message, the ET, can be trusted? How do you know that? Doesn't he know what his ancient offspring wrote about him? Okay, again, we're presuming that this is true, that the extraterrestrial gods created us. Well, doesn't the ET who abducted you know what the ancient Mesopotamians wrote about him long ago when he supposedly created you? Did he forget that? The bottom line is that in the ET creator view, we were created as slaves, and our makers wanted it that way. In contrast, the theistic creator worldview has every man, woman, child, unborn, born, whatever, every person has inherent worth as God's imagers. Life is sacred because we are the receptacles of God's life and share certain of his attributes. Humans are Yahweh in effigy. That is, we are his representatives. We're not gods, but we are placed upon the earth, as I said before in another session. We are God's representatives. We are to rule and steward, take care of the world, not to rape and pillage it. We are to take care of the world, steward it as though God were here. We aren't, as the Old Testament teaches, God's representatives on earth if the ET view is correct. Also, if it's correct, there's no higher purpose for your life, since there's no concept of eternal reward in a personal heaven from a personal loving God. That idea is completely foreign in Mesopotamia. If you read any introduction to Mesopotamian religion, Mesopotamians were the most pessimistic of all ancient people about the afterlife. The only semi-positive thing they have to say about death and Sheol and the underworld is that if you're a king or a peasant, you wind up at the same place. So the ground is level in Sheol. But everyone in Sheol endures what the best description I've ever seen of this is, I think it's from Jean Bottero, who's an expert in Mesopotamian religion. He referred to it as a cadaverous existence that never ends. Ooh, I can't wait. This is not a good place. But if this view is true, you don't have anything waiting for you. In other words, you can serve the gods all you want, be their slave, and what do you get at the end? You get to live as a cadaver. That's just wonderful. The conclusion follows again from the fact that if ET is God, then his status as a created being himself means that all in the universe that is real is the material. There's no spiritual reality beyond the material, and again, the Mesopotamians weren't looking forward to anything beyond that anyway. Pantheists and those who want to give the universe itself life or treat it as a living being or biocosm are left with this reality. No matter how spiritual they think the universe is, it's still just matter, beyond which is nothing. There's nothing beyond that. Because if you say there's something beyond matter, something outside creation, you've just dumped your pantheism. Typically, those who speak of the universe as its own creator do so to avoid the idea of a personal deity that transcends creation, because that idea comes from religion or the Bible. And they want to avoid the personal accountability that the biblical worldview entails. No matter how badly you want to deny the theistic creator view and yet keep a feeling of personal destiny beyond the material, these two ideas are contradictory in terms of philosophy. If matter is all there is, then matter is all that is. Okay? If something is beyond matter, that thing can't be material. The Big Bang doesn't create itself. It's a result, not a cause. If there's no higher purpose for your life because there is no immaterial, non-physical, non-material place that you go when you die, if there's no higher purpose, you have nothing to look forward to, you are simply a higher form of animal. You might be lesser than the aliens who made you, whose only purpose was to have you serve them. And if you imagine that there are multiple races of aliens, some who want to aid us in achieving our high potential, then some questions follow. You might say, well, maybe only the bad guys treat us as slaves. What about the good ones? How can you tell the taskmaster alien from the benefactor alien? And if you read the abduction literature, this is not, that is a legitimate question. We know from Sitchin's account of the conniving escapades of the gods of Sumer that they behave just like we do. The point is, they are fully capable of deception and self-interest. So how do you know they can be trusted and who to trust? If this is reality, again, the polytheistic Mesopotamian Anunnaki scenario, if that's the truth, how in the world do you know who to trust? Because they're constantly going behind each other's back and conniving and deceiving and lying and cheating. Who are you going to trust? If alien abductees are to be believed, how are the violations they undergo benevolent? I know, it's rhetorical. Why is it that Dr. David Jacobs, leading authority on alien abduction, has concluded the alien motivation is not our benefit, but for their own? Again, he's not the only one. The theistic view, in contrast, has an ultimate purpose for humanity. We are to image God, which we've talked about before, to work in his stead, to be his representative. And what that means down here, this idea is actually the basis in Reformation theology. That all work, any gainful employment, is godly. All work has value. There should be no distinction. Let me phrase it correctly. I don't want to say there is no distinction. In God's mind there isn't, but there should be, in our mind, no distinction between what we think of as secular and sacred. It's all sacred in God's mind. It makes God happy when we are creative and industrious, and God wants us to find work that we enjoy and then revel in it. We are to put our trust in Him for our eternal destiny by obeying His plan for our salvation, so that the practice that's a typo there. So the practice of our lives is, as the Westminster Confession puts it, to love God and enjoy Him forever. That is the point of why we're here in God's mind, the biblical God, not the Anunnaki gods. The outcome of this is eternal sonship or eternal childship, to become the sons of God, the children of God, to replace what has been lost through the progression of evil. This is what John says, point blank. See what love the Father has given us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know Him. Beloved, we are God's children now. What we will be has not yet been revealed. What we do know is this: when He is revealed, we will be like Him, for we will see Him as He is. Question: what is the destiny? What is your destiny at the hands of E.T.? To be ramped up into the collective consciousness? Okay, what proof do you have that E.T. has changed from the self-interested taskmaster he was in the days of Mesopotamia? The third logical implication to the E.T. creator view, we've talked about 1 and 2, and number 3 is the idea of racial superiority and inequality is true. It's absolutely true. This conclusion logically extends from the Mesopotamian texts that tell us that the gods created kingship for humankind. If you read Sitchin closely, he will refer to 2 creative acts with respect to humanity. One is prior to the flood, where a primitive form of humankind is created again as slaves, but then one of the gods, Anki, comes back and sort of ramps up or genetically tinkers again with the humanoid thing, and specifically does that, adds more divine blood to him, because we are going to make them this particular line. And you actually have 2 lines emerge in Mesopotamian thinking again. We're going to make certain of these individuals more like us, because we're going to give kingship to them. We're going to put kingship in their hands. So if this is the case, then certain bloodlines are inherently superior because they're royal. And I want to say this: if you read Lawrence Gardner, this is Lawrence Gardner. Okay, bloodline, the Holy Grail, the whole bit, the Jesus bloodline mythology, going back to this, you have to believe this. If this is what you think the texts say, then this is the conclusion. Certain bloodlines are superior because they have more of the Anunnaki blood. See, we all people who would latch onto this, what Gardner's saying, they read it and think, that's me. That's me. I'm one of the superior ones. Well, maybe not. Questions that naturally follow. Are you among the elite? Are you as racially gifted by the gods as other people? Do you suppose that African Americans and Jews are in the royal bloodline? Hispanics? Put any other race other than white Anglo-Saxons in there. If the idea of racial supremacy is true, should we defend it? Should we defend it? Will the gods enforce the idea when they return? Will they weed us out? Will there be those that rule and those who serve? Again, in contrast, the theistic worldview is that all races are equal because all races are human. All humans are God's imagers, male and female. There are no exceptions. No, I know that the church, in some of its more wonderfully dunder-headed moments, and I'm including in this century, has propped up the idea of racial superiority through pseudo-exegesis of passages like the curse of Canaan and Ham. It is not what the text teaches. It's what people who are predisposed to racial inequality have said the text teaches, but it is not what the text teaches. And frankly, today, I think the exegesis is a little less self-serving than it was perhaps in the Civil War and in the 60s. Those humans who follow God's plan for salvation for all are considered royal offspring. Every believer is specifically called a son of the king. It is a royal title. the sons of God who will rule over a new earth with him. Male and female, no exceptions. The idea goes all the way back to the Old Testament. It's not just a Christian thing. It's very present in Jewish theology. Hosea 2:1, the number of the people of Israel shall be like that of the sands of the sea, which cannot be measured or counted. Instead of being told, you are not my people, again, remember they were exiled, they shall be called children of the living God. Daniel 7:27, the kingship and dominion. It's the same chapter, by the way, the divine council chapter we just looked like with Ezekiel. Kingship and dominion and grandeur belonging to all the kingdoms under heaven will be given to the people of the holy ones of the Most High. Will be given to the people of the holy ones of the Most High. Their, plural, kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey them. John, New Testament now, but to all who received him, who believed in his name, speaking of Jesus here, he gave power to become children of God. Galatians 3:29, if you belong to Christ, then you're Abraham's offspring and heirs according to the promise. The promises given to the Jews above in Daniel. 1 John 3:1 we've already looked at. The fourth logical implication to the ET creator view, again we looked at 1, 2, and 3. The dignity, no higher purpose, and racial inequality. And fourth, then the ET gods are your creator masters, not your brothers. Now this is a little repetitious with the first one, but it's a different angle. They're not your brethren. If ETs created us, they have the right. They have the right of ownership over our bodies, souls, and children. We are theirs by right, if this is true. What that means is that whether you like it or not, royal kingship is a monarchy. It is not a democracy. You have no right to complain or gripe about what happened to you in your experience. You got to take the whole package, in other words. The elite command, the rest of us submit or suffer. Don't complain then that you have been abducted and abused. You have no right to demand justice, for the alien has legal claim over you. Period. The theistic creator worldview, again in contrast. As noted already, in a biblical worldview, we are all destined to be kings under God's sovereignty. The image, the sonship, the rulership is democratized. It is not kept for a select few or for a certain bloodline. It's not even kept for beings in heaven. As Paul said, don't you know, 1 Corinthians 6, that you'll rule over angels. Think of the council. God of Israel, sons of God, angels. Paul says, don't you know you're going to rule over angels? You're the middle slot. You are the royal household of God. You will command them, not the other way around. This is the biblical worldview. Jesus, as incarnate God and Redeemer, is our brother, not our owner. Now, I realize that Christ is Lord in Christian theology, but that's not where it ends. He is also our brother, as Hebrews 2 says very, very plainly. What are human beings that you are mindful of them, or mortals that you care for them? You have made them for a little while lower than the angels. You have crowned them with glory and honor, subjecting all things under their feet. Now, in subjecting all things to them, God left nothing outside their control. As it is, we do not yet see everything in subjection to them, but we do see Jesus, who for a little while was made lower than the angels. He was made human. Now crowned with glory and honor because of the suffering of death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. It was fitting that God, for whom and through whom all things exist, in bringing many children to glory, should make the pioneer of their salvation perfect through sufferings. For the one who sanctifies and those who are sanctified all have one Father. For this reason, Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters, saying, I will proclaim your name to my brothers and sisters. In the midst of the council, I will praise you. It's not all about ownership. Concluding focus, two summative questions. I'd like to ask you, does E.T. love you, and how do you know? Pretty simple. Well, they tell me so. They tell me I'm specially chosen. They want humanity to survive in the future and to evolve toward a greater self-enlightenment. Really? If the stories about the gods in ancient texts are true, why are those stories so different than those messages? Can these beings be trusted? What kind of love do they feel for you? Is it a sacrificial love? The kind of love you would have for a puppy or a car or your favorite thing at home? At what level is the emotional attachment that you think they have for you? To use an illustration, as your creator, do your E.T. gods love you as a child? Do they really? If E.T. loves you, then why create you as a slave? Why create you and leave? Why create you or hide? The fact is, at best, we're an experiment, not a loved child. The God of the Bible has an emotional investment in us, and I want to ask, where is E.T.'s emotional investment? The truth is, there is no emotional investment from E.T. It's a scientific curiosity at best, and a pretty detached one at that. At best, E.T. is an absentee parent. At worst, he is a cold, detached researcher. Is this the way you love your children? Is this how you want your children to remember their childhood? Probably not. There really is something better. And I would suggest to you, and that's the end of the session here, I would suggest to you that the theistic worldview is favorable, is more favorable, is better. And it's in your interest to consider it. And that's part of what the conference, as we, as in my case, as I've contributed to it, but as Guy has constructed it, to try to bring, create a bridge between what we look at seriously as paranormal stuff and perhaps spiritual stuff, whatever the intersection is. One of the goals is to get you to consider that if you opt out of a Christian view of this stuff and you embrace the other side, what it really means. Have you thought through it to the end conclusion? Or have you not? Perhaps not. That's all I have.